evening and thank you for joining us. Red Lake has declared a state of emergency over severe damage caused by a windstorm yesterday. The municipality saw extreme wind conditions gusting up to 110 kilometers per hour last night, causing downed trees and a widespread power outage in the region. Over 2,000 Hydro One customers were affected by the storm. The mayor of Red Lake says luckily no one was hurt and advises residents to use caution when out on the streets. Cleanup has started, and until further notice, Centennial Park, including the Dan Cutcher-Thren ball field, will be closed for public use. Thunder Bay Police is requesting the public's assistance in an investigation into a suspicious vehicle that approached a young boy at around 8:30 last night. Officers learned the 10-year-old victim was playing hockey in a driveway on Converson Place when a vehicle driven by a male with a female passenger in the back rolled down her window and asked the boy about personal details. The child retreated home and the vehicle fled, last seen traveling north into a laneway between two houses at the corner of Selkirk Street South. The boy believes the color of the car could have been off-white, yellow, or beige. The female passenger is described as being Caucasian, possibly in her 20s with a thin build, and wore a black hat and a beige sweater. The male driver is described as having darker skin, possibly in his 30s with a thin build, and wore a gray baseball cap and a large sweater. Anyone with information about this incident is asked to contact police. There is a new structure at Current River Park that pays tribute to the fallen soldiers of the 52nd New Ontario Battalion. The newly installed monument was unveiled in a ceremony this morning. Tyler Kelleher has more.
Sounds of the McGilvery Band rang down Cumberland Street as the group piped in members of the Lake Superior Scottish Regiment to Current River Park, where the latest monument dedicated to the region's fallen heroes was introduced.
It's been over 100 years that these men have died that are on the names are on the plaque, and it's about time that they're recognized, and I'm very pleased with the result. I'm very pleased with the number of people that turned out to commemorate and remember these individuals.
Each name a member of the 52nd New Ontario Battalion, a diverse group of soldiers from Ontario's northwest who volunteered their services to fight in the First World War. Over 4,000 enlisted, nearly 800 died, most of whom filtered in through Thunder Bay.
A lot of it here is centered on Thunder Bay as the sort of regional catchment area for many of the battalions that were formed, not just the 52nd, but the 52nd certainly paramount amongst that.
Lieutenant General Omer Lavoie is a native of Marathon. He started his career as a private soldier in the Scottish Regiment, now a deputy commander of NATO's Joint Force Command in Naples, Italy. Lavoie understands the sacrifice that comes with enlisting in the service.
As a commanding officer who commanded troops in combat and sadly lost 19 soldiers killed in action in my time in Afghanistan, I can only sort of empathize with the families who shared and experienced that loss and that absolute sacrifice.
He is a member of our regimental family, as I mentioned in my speech. He is the senior serving member in that sense of the Lake Superior Scottish Regiment, and so we were quite honored to have him here.
The dedication ceremony concluded with a laying of the wreaths from city officials and other local organizations. Lieutenant Colonel Ratz says the monument should be a place for people to look back and honor the sacrifices that this region's soldiers had made. Tyler Kelleher, TBT News.
Dryden City Council is being asked to look into providing funds for the local youth center. It comes at a time where the community is still in the midst of its debt reduction strategy, is continuing to face funding cuts from higher levels of government. Adam Riley reports.
Municipalities across Ontario are bracing for funding cuts from the province and as a result are now scrutinizing every line item in their budgets, even more so than previous years, which is why Council in Dryden is putting extra thought into a request to direct funding towards the city's youth center.
The center needs a long-term sustainable youth facilitator. We're asking the City of Dryden to create and fund the youth facilitator position.
Tachik says the numbers speak to how important the center is to the city's youth. The facility was open for 37 days this past summer, had 120 youths attend, and sign in almost 600 times, adding there was no issues at the center which required police intervention. Councillor Shane McKinnon has advocated for the youth center in the past and wants to see money from the municipal accommodation tax go towards future programming. But for the interim,
I kind of look to our manager of community service here, maybe in the future to look at some bridge funding or something to get these doors open now, not a year from now, not next January, next week.
Mayor Greg Wilson wasn't able to commit to funding a facilitator for the center at this time, but he is supportive of finding alternatives.
If they're in existence now in the summer, if we want to, the idea is, do we want to extend it throughout the winter? And if we do, we could probably do it without even needing a lot of extra money. Maybe there's small amounts that they might need. For example, you could look at for corporate donations for some of the items that they mentioned.
Council was also asked to take a closer look at the proposed crematorium for the city. Skilling Crescent residents Tommy and Amy Johnson, who are opposed to the development, contest the site would affect a nearby wetland and say city planning for the area is outdated.
You can see Swanson's Creek comes through here, and you can actually see the creek flow through here. This creek eventually attaches to the Wabigoon River. Somewhere in here is where you consider a wetland to a floodplain, and I'm not really sure why that is.
Wilson says council is expected to hear a report and recommendation from administration on October 15th. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Thunder Bay police arrested 3 people in a West Fort drug bust last night. Officers arrived at a residence in the 200 block of Frederica Street following reports of unwanted people in an apartment. 11 people were found, none of whom were the actual tenants of the place. Police removed the people, and while speaking with 2 males, officer noticed paraphernalia consistent with drug trafficking and a substance believed to be cocaine. Police also seized a loaded handgun and more than $1,400. Officers eventually located a woman from Thunder Bay who claimed she was watching the apartment for the tenant. As a result of an investigation, 2 males ages 18 and 22 from Mississauga, as well as a local 26-year-old woman, have been charged with a variety of offenses. A 29-year-old female has been charged with mischief after giving a false report about an attempted abduction. Thunder Bay police took the report that was said to have taken place Monday night. The female reported that 2 men in an SUV attempted to abduct her while she was walking eastbound on Red River Road, heading towards the Clarkson Street bus stop. An investigation was launched, and after examination of evidence, including video footage in the area, police determined the statement provided was false. The female was subsequently charged with public mischief and will appear with a future court date. Police would like to remind the public that false reports can be subject to criminal charges and that such investigations can be a significant drain on their resources. Local Rotary clubs are promoting climate action in hopes of seeing greater peace. A ceremony was held at the Tai Chi Garden to celebrate the United Nations International Day of Peace. Rotarians gathered to commemorate the city's 7th annual Day of Peace. The UN declared September 21st as a day to strengthen the principles among all nations and peoples. And this year, the theme is climate action. President of Fort William Rotary, Stephen Marguerite, says locals can do their part by looking at their carbon footprint and acting in a way that's respectful to the environment, such as reducing, reusing, and recycling. He says we all have a role to play in advancing peace.
Here in Canada, although we haven't experienced war in our territory for a long time, we have many different nations here living together with the First Nations and other people. And I think it's important that we really do have that cultural understanding and bringing communities together.
Marguerite says 1 million Rotarians around the world are working together to bring peace and cultural awareness to the forefront. The International Day of Peace has been recognized annually since 1981. Engines revved as the Toys for Tots motorcycle ride returned for the 36th year. Local riders cruised down city streets for a cause that gives kids something to look forward to under the tree come Christmas. The event kicked off at the Harley-Davidson dealership in the city's south side. Several motorcycle clubs met in the parking lot before they left on the group ride to the Salvation Army on Cumberland Street. Toys for Tots works in coordination with the Salvation Army's Christmas toy campaign and is the first event on the organization's holiday schedule.
This is actually our kickoff activity for the season, so we obviously have to be starting to gather toys and donations and that now to get prepared for the bigger events to come closer to Christmas.
It's the smile on the kids' faces. When you're driving down the street and the kids pull up beside you and you look at the kids' faces as they're turning around and walking up beside you, the way they smile and lighten up, it's worth every minute.
Over 100 toys were collected by the end of the day. Toy and monetary donations can be made on site at the Salvation Army. Ryan, now that school has kicked off,